If you've got a pet dog or a cat, you probably know that they have whiskers. And you probably also know that they use their whiskers as feelers to give their faces a heightened sense of touch. But did you know that seals have whiskers too? And not just any whiskers, but super whiskers. In this video, you'll learn what's so special about seal whiskers. And I'll tell you about my research, which is using these whiskers as inspiration for advances in energy efficiency that could help the planet. I'm Dr. Christin Murphy, and I run the Bio-Inspired Research and Development Lab for the US Navy here in Newport, Rhode Island. Bio-inspired research means we research and develop new technologies using insights gained from biological systems we observe in nature. I'm excited to tell you about what we're learning from these little marine mammal facial hairs. But first, let me introduce myself and tell you how I ended up here investigating seal superpowers for the Navy. Sometimes people take a while to figure out what they want to do with their life, and that's okay. But that wasn't me. Ever since I was back in high school, I knew I wanted to be a marine biologist, and pretty much everything I've done has been moving towards that goal. After getting a degree in biology and animal behavior, I even spent 2 years living on a ship. This was a teaching vessel sailing the coastal waters from New England to the Caribbean and Central America, with students as part of the crew. And then I went on to grad school to get a PhD in oceanography. I've always been fascinated with the process of discovery, and the fact that the ocean still has lots of unexplored aspects that are there waiting for us to uncover if we just put in the effort. I knew in high school that the math and science we were taught would be a big part of the preparation that could help me participate in this process of discovery, but there were still a few surprises waiting for me. I hadn't predicted that algorithms and signal processing would be such a big part of what I do, but modern marine biology is all about computing and technology. In fact, the kind of work I do now didn't even exist at the time I was in high school. To tell you more about that, let's pay a visit to our facility. This is the Bio-Inspired Research and Development Lab here in Newport, Rhode Island. It's a really cool facility where we work on biologically inspired technology and a related field called biomimicry, where we design materials, structures, and systems based on biological processes and entities. We study everything from bat echolocation to fish schooling to how marine mammals sense their environment. Biomimicry treats the organisms around us on Earth as technological partners. They demonstrate ways of arriving at engineering solutions for problems we're interested in. Then we do our own engineering to make those solutions work for us as well. The us here at the Bio-Inspired Lab is an awesome research team that's made up of people who specialize in a wide range of disciplines. We couldn't do the work we do without the contributions of all of these people. In addition to marine biologists and oceanographers, we have mechanical and electrical engineers, and even theoretical mathematicians. I'd like to introduce you to one of our mechanical engineers, Dr. William Martin, who has done some especially impressive work on the Whisker project.
Hello, my name is Dr. William Martin. I am a senior mechanical engineer at Newark Newport. My main focus at Newark is building systems for ocean-going platforms that have to withstand forces due to forward travel, wave slap, and crushing ocean depths. I also have to pay attention to things such as salt corrosion, extreme temperatures, and even shark bites. It's very difficult to study systems while in these harsh ocean environments, so we employ state-of-the-art equipment in our laboratories to simulate these conditions and measure the responses. One of the cool instruments that we use in the lab is a laser used to measure mechanical vibrations. So for example, when working with Christin and her team in the lab, these lasers allow us to detect the minute movements of the whiskers that are produced when the seals move through the water. I'll let Christin elaborate.
Thanks, Dr. Martin. So, imagine if 5 seconds after I threw an object into a swimming pool, I showed you the surface and then asked you, just by looking at the ripples and waves bouncing around the surface of the water, to tell me what object I threw in there and where in the pool I'd thrown it. You probably couldn't say just from the ripples, right? And then imagine I didn't even let you look at it, but told you could only stick your fingers in the water and just by feeling those ripples, tell me what the object was and where it went. Totally impossible, right? But that's basically what seals can do with their whiskers. In fact, they can use those whiskers to track moving objects in the water, like fish, by the minute water disturbances those objects leave behind. Seals can use this skill to locate swimming prey and even identify different types of fish by their fluid motion trails, all from feeling the water currents on their array of whiskers. While it's amazing and fascinating that they can do this at all, what's even more interesting is the structural advantage they've evolved in the whiskers themselves to help them do it. The shape of the whiskers has particular details that make this remarkable capability possible. Tiny bumps that reduce what we call the vibrational noise of the whisker moving in the water stream. To understand what I mean by vibrational noise, think about what happens when you hang up some fabric in the wind to tell the wind direction. If the fabric is a flat strip, like a flag, you can see the general wind direction, but the fabric flutters around a lot, so there's a limit to how precisely you can tell the direction at any given moment. The exact wind direction is the signal we're looking for, and the fluttering is vibrational noise that somewhat obscures the signal. Now, instead of a strip of fabric, we used a cone. Now we have what we call a windsock. When the wind blows a windsock, it inflates with air, and that pressure inside makes it resist fluttering. So we get a much less noisy indication of the wind direction, which is why they use windsocks instead of flags to show the wind direction at airfields. The bumps on the seal's whiskers make the whisker more like a windsock than a flag. They reduce the vibrational noise of the whisker fluttering around, allowing a more clean signal of the fine movements of the water to be captured. This is good for the seal because it gives a clearer sense of the objects of interest moving through the water. And when those feelings are combined across all 60 or so of the seal's whiskers, and they're able to use all of them at once, the seals get a really clear picture of what's going on under the water, all from what is essentially a sense of touch. To get an understanding of how these whiskers work, we've needed to use a lot of skills and equipment. We use math and physics to understand the hydrodynamics, which is the way the water moves around the whiskers, and to design computational models of what's going on. To capture the shape of the actual seal whiskers, we use CT scanning, which is a technique that's also used in medical imaging. Then, we use 3D modeling and 3D printing to generate and manufacture artificial whisker analogs. And we do a lot of physical experiments, such as using our awesome flow tank to observe fluid flow fields around the artificial whiskers in real time using dye and other techniques. A whisker may seem like just a special kind of hair, but there's a lot of complexity that goes into understanding how it works. Biomimicry is all about the applications, and there are a lot of ways that understanding these whiskers can help us use that knowledge to solve problems we're interested in. Let me show you an example in the flow tank. Here we have a smooth whisker that would be typical of a dog or a cat whisker. When the water flows over the cylinder, it creates these rotating vortices that, while very pretty to look at, can be very disruptive to the structure because the fluctuations can cause it to vibrate. Now, here's an enlarged replica of a seal whisker that we scanned and 3D printed. When the water flows over the seal whisker, the bumps break up those vortices, causing the whisker to vibrate less and creating less disturbance for other whiskers that would be downstream. One of the big applications for this is energy efficiency, because energy conservation is an extremely important topic across pretty much all areas of human endeavor. Anything that moves through a fluid, or has a fluid move over it, can benefit from noise and drag reduction as we try to improve its efficiency. As we consider these applications, it's important to realize that as technologists using biomimicry, we're not limited to the exact output of the seal's evolutionary design process. Once we understand the noise and drag reducing functionality of the whisker bumps, we can start to play around with all kinds of details based on the naturally observed features to see what sort of effects can be produced. We do things like making larger whisker-inspired structures and changing the size and spacing of the bumps. One way we could vary the shape of our whisker structure would be to generate a mathematical description of the whiskers and then use the aspects we want to vary, say the height, width, and spacing of the bumps, as inputs to that function, or as we say in math and computer science, as parameters to the function. In fact, there's a mathematical form for describing functions called parametric representation that can make it easier for us to generate points on the function in order to draw or visualize it in 2 or 3 dimensions. Consider the implicit equation of a unit circle, x squared plus y squared equals 1. To draw this, we can't just plug in any x and y, we would need to rearrange and solve for one variable. But this equation can also be represented in terms of 2 equations, each having one independent variable. Call it t. X is the cosine of t and y is the sine of t, and if you plot this by varying t, you draw a circle. To turn this into a non-unit circle, you can add the radius r. Or, to make an ellipse, have the radii be different for x and y. If we make the cosine and the sine out of phase by multiplying t, we can produce lobes in the output. Parametric equations can easily be extended into 3 dimensions, for example, to draw a helix. Just vary the z-axis according to the same parameter t. Most online graphing applications support parametric equations, so why not try setting some up and playing with the inputs and seeing what kinds of complex shapes you can draw? In our case, for our whisker generation function, we might set up a description that allows the adjustment of 3 input parameters: the amplitude of the bumps, the width of the bumps, and the spacing between the bumps. Take a look at what happens as we adjust those 3 parameters. Once we have a whisker geometrically designed using this math, we can then scale it to whatever size we want and then output it for fluid flow testing, perhaps by 3D printing it. In collaboration with our university partners, one application that we are looking at for this work is wind farm efficiency. Ideally, you would maximize the number of wind turbines placed in a given area in order to harvest as much energy as possible from the wind blowing through that space. But when they're placed one behind another, the front turbine blocks the airflow from those behind. The available wind is slower, and therefore the following turbines are less efficient. Also, the airflow that the ones in the back receive is of lower quality than what the front ones receive. This is because the front turbines introduce further turbulence to the flow, and the following turbines again do not perform as well when the air is more turbulent. The forces on the turbines also tend to vary, having a stronger influence on the structure. But remember what I said earlier about the seal whiskers? They are able to use the whole cluster of whiskers for sensing, because the special structure of the whiskers interferes less with the flow, so even the ones in the back get a useful signal. So the question we're looking at is, can we change the shape of the turbine tower in order to allow the turbines in the back to preserve their efficiency so that we can fit more turbines into the same amount of space to harvest more energy from a given area? A similar problem occurs with wind turbines in the ocean, where they float and they are anchored to the seafloor with cables. In this case, we ask, can we reduce the vibrations on the mooring cables by changing their geometry and likewise reducing the movement of the turbines by changing the geometry of the tower? We absolutely think so. This is only considering wind power. Many more applications are possible. So as we look to the future, this is where this work is going. First, we're trying to get a better understanding of the biological system, how the seal uses its own whiskers that it evolved for sensing, and then looking at the technological biomimicry, finding other areas where reduction in vibrational noise and drag can improve things that move in flow fields such as propellers and bridge cables, and using the insights from the biological systems to come up with methods of doing so. There's still so much out there for us to learn from the biological world about how organisms have evolved solutions to physical problems and how we can use those demonstrations as input to our own technology development, especially in the area of energy efficiency. Animals have a limited energy budget based on the amount of food they're able to capture, so they have to make every bit count. As humans, we're realizing that the same is true for our society. Our ability to take care of the planet depends on us making the most out of the energy resources that are available and not wasting them unnecessarily. My high school self would be so proud and amazed to see where I've ended up and the lab I'm running now. That love, respect, and fascination that I've always had for the biology of the ocean has been able to combine with my training in math and science to recognize and understand these naturally evolved capabilities. It's so exciting to use that knowledge to push our own technology forward, helping to preserve our own existence in concert with the natural environment. As we work in partnership with the natural world, it's equally important to preserve these natural resources. We are only just beginning to realize the potential of learning from the amazing diversity of organisms on this planet. Biomimicry is an exciting cross-disciplinary area that didn't even really exist when I was in high school. But thanks to the Navy's commitment to science and technology, I found myself at the forefront of a field that's only becoming more and more critically important. There's a lot of work yet to do, but it may just help us save the planet. Buy a whisker.